Tonight we trade the relentless ping of notifications for the gentle knock of halyards against wooden masts. We leave behind the sterile glow of screens for the warm, pulsing light of oiled paper lanterns. You are standing on a rough stone step, your back to a steep, pine-clad mountain, your face to a narrow strait of water that glimmers like liquid obsidian under a twilight sky. The air is a complex tapestry, a bass note of salt and wet stone, overlaid with the pungent, not unpleasant scent of drying seaweed, and just a hint of wood smoke from 100 evening fires. You can hear the rhythmic suck and pull of waves on a pebble beach somewhere to your left, a sound as old as the land itself. A path of hard-packed earth, worn smooth by generations of straw sandals, leads down from your step and into a cluster of perhaps 40 low, dark-roofed buildings that cling to the thin strip of land between mountain and sea. This is not a postcard. It is a living, breathing machine for extracting life from the water, and every splinter, every stone, every calloused hand here has a purpose. You are about to walk through a world governed by tides, seasons, and the sheer, back-breaking labor required to not only survive but to pay your rice tax to a lord you will never see. Frankly, you probably wouldn't last a week. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You take a first step forward, and the modern world doesn't so much vanish as get quietly absorbed by the details. The stone beneath your feet is slick with evening dew. The temperature drops perceptibly as you leave the last of the day's sun behind the mountain ridge. You are entering the village proper now, not through a gate or an arch, but simply by the act of walking between two houses so close together you could touch both walls with outstretched elbows. Their surfaces are dark wood, aged to a silver gray by wind and spray, the boards fitted together with a craftsmanship that speaks of a time before nails were commonplace. Your eyes adjust to the deeper gloom of the alleyway. Above you, the sky is a narrow strip of deepening blue, and from the eaves of the houses, strange shapes dangle, coiled ropes, woven baskets, and what look like giant, frayed mushrooms, which you eventually realize are upside-down fishing nets, hung to dry. Ahead, the alley opens onto what passes for a main street. It's barely wider than two carts, if carts ever came here, which they mostly don't. The ground is the same dark earth, but here it's patterned with the soft, golden light of Andean lanterns placed beside doorways. The light they cast is faint, honey-colored, and utterly alive, flickering gently in the salt breeze. It doesn't illuminate the street so much as punctuate its darkness, creating pools of visibility that make the shadows between them feel deeper, more intimate. You can see why a wise traveler would want to be indoors by now. But you are not here to be wise, you are here to observe. You hear a door slide shut with a soft wooden rumble, followed by the sound of a latch being dropped. A low conversation filters through a paper-screened window, the words indistinct but the tone weary, satisfied. The day's labor is done. Historians widely accept that villages like this one, in the Edo period, operated under a system of strict social stratification, with the samurai class far away in castle towns, and these fishing communities largely self-governing under village elders. But the hierarchy here is based on boat ownership, catch volume, and sheer grit, not inherited swords. You pause beside one of the lanterns. Its frame is bamboo, its panels made of washi paper stretched thin and treated with persimmon juice to make it translucent and mildly waterproof. The fuel inside is not whale oil, as you might romantically imagine, but simpler, more accessible rapeseed oil, burning with a slightly smoky flame. It's a humble piece of technology, but in this moment, it feels like the very definition of civilization. A small, deliberate victory against the overwhelming dark. As you stand there, a figure emerges from the shadows between two houses. It's an old man, his back bent like a bowed spar, moving with a slow, deliberate gait. He's carrying a wooden bucket. He doesn't look at you. You are a shadow among shadows, but you catch the profile of his face in the lantern light. Skin like cured leather, eyes reduced to slits from a lifetime of squinting against sun and spray. He wears a simple, dark kimono, hitched up at the knees, and his feet are bare, calloused soles slapping softly on the cool earth. He passes you without a glance, heading toward the sound of the water. He is the first resident you've seen up close, and in his silent, purposeful movement, you see the entire rhythm of this place. He is not out for a stroll. Every motion has intent. Every breath is likely counted against the work of tomorrow. You follow, at a distance, letting the soft glow of the lanterns guide you deeper into the quiet, ticking heart of the night. The old man with the bucket turns a corner and is swallowed by the darkness between two storehouses, leaving you alone on the main path. You continue forward, the packed earth firm and cool beneath your feet, or rather, beneath the Zori straw sandals you've somehow acquired, because your modern sneakers would be an obscene squeak in this symphony of soft sounds. The path isn't straight. It meanders, following the natural contour of the land, bending around a massive, moss-covered rock that some ancient flood or farmer decided was too much trouble to move. This is not a street designed for grandeur or ceremony. It is a groove worn by necessity, the village's main artery, and at this hour, its pulse is slow and deep. You walk in the center, where the earth is most worn, a subtle channel that guides your steps. To your left and right, the buildings press in. They are not uniform. Some are simple minka dwellings, with steep thatched roofs of kaya reed that look like shaggy, sleeping beasts. Others have wooden shingles, weighted down with stones against the typhoon winds that must scream through this strait. The walls are a patchwork of materials: wide wooden boards, sections of woven bamboo plastered with clay, and occasionally, where resources allowed, a panel of faded white shikui plaster. You run your fingers along one wall as you pass. The wood is not smooth. Its grain is raised and textured by centuries of weather, a tactile record of every storm. It smells of dampness, of age, and faintly, of the nuka rice bran paste once used to polish its surface. The sounds here are muted, loud. The constant backdrop is the sea's sigh, but closer, you hear the chatter of a creek somewhere, diverted through a hollowed-out bamboo pipe to run alongside the path, providing drainage and fresh water. It gurgles like a contented child. From inside one house comes the rhythmic shush-shush of a broom on a tamped earth floor. From another, the faint, melodic clink of a ceramic bowl being set down on a wooden table. These are the sounds of settling, of small reckonings at the day's end. You pass a low fence made of lashed-together branches, and a dog, a small, tan, pointy-eared creature, lifts its head from its paws. It regards you without barking, its tail giving a single, half-hearted thump against the ground before it rests its head again. Even the animals here understand the economy of energy. You come to a slight widening in the path, a place where the buildings step back just enough to create a small, irregular plaza. This is likely the closest thing the village has to a public square. At its center is the communal well, its stone ring worn smooth by the rub of countless rope knots. But your eyes are drawn to the ground. Here, the earth is not just packed, it's patterned. In the soft lantern light falling from a nearby eaves, you can see a series of shallow grooves, curving lines, and depressions pressed into the surface. At first, they seem random, but as you crouch down, tracing them with your eyes, a picture emerges. These are the scuff marks of life. This deep, bowl-shaped depression is where generations have stood to draw water, shifting their weight. These long, parallel grooves are from the legs of the heavy wooden tubs used to carry wash or fish. Those fainter, crisscrossing lines are from the straw sandals of children playing some forgotten game while their parents worked. It's a map of routine, etched into the earth itself. You stand up, and as you do, you notice the signage. Nailed to a post beside a larger, more solid-looking building with a deep eaves is a wooden placard. The characters are carved and filled with black ink. You might not be able to read them, but their meaning is clear. This is a place of authority. Perhaps the village headman's house, or a shared storehouse for tax rice. The fact that every village, by law, had to maintain such a storehouse for the annual rice tax is a widely accepted historical pillar of the Edo period's control. But the lesser-known detail is the quiet rebellion often embedded in the accounting. Historians still argue whether the systematic underreporting of a village's true productive capacity, keeping a secret, second ledger known only to the elders, was a form of peasant resistance or simply pragmatic risk management against a lord's unpredictable demands. Looking at this quiet, sturdy building, you can imagine the heated, whispered conversations that must have happened inside its walls after the magistrate's agent had left for the year. A breeze funnels down the path, cooler now, carrying a new, sharper scent to mix with the wood smoke and salt, the tang of fermenting soy and the earthy smell of miso paste. Someone is preparing tomorrow's breakfast, or perhaps salting vegetables for the winter. The breeze also makes the lantern flames dip and dance, causing the shadows of the rooftops to twist and lean against each other like gossiping giants. For a moment, the entire village feels alive in a different way, not just as a collection of houses, but as a single, breathing entity, settling its bones for the night. You leave the small square behind, the path narrowing again, leading you downhill, your senses now fully tuned to the whisper of this packed earth world, pulling you inexorably toward the ever-present voice of the sea. The path, following the logic of water, leads you steadily downward. The sound of the creek in its bamboo conduit grows louder, and the scent of the sea intensifies, now edged with the low-tide aroma of exposed mud and rotting kelp. You arrive at a fork. The main path continues along what seems to be a slightly more level route, but a narrower, even more worn track branches off to the right, heading directly toward the black glint of water. A single, faint lantern glows at its end, marking a doorway. It's not an invitation, but a beacon for a specific person, likely the old man with the bucket. You follow the smaller track. The ground becomes sandier underfoot, the zori picking up tiny granules. The buildings here are different. Less finished, more utilitarian. The one with the lantern is a low, long structure. Its walls a patchwork of driftwood planks and woven bamboo. It sits slightly apart from its neighbors, with a cleared, hard-packed yard in front. This is not just a home, it's a workshop, a garage, a storage shed. This is a fisherman's threshold, and you've arrived at the moment of evening repair. You stop at the edge of the lantern's pooled light, becoming part of the shadow again. The sliding wooden door is half open, and inside, you see the old man. He has emptied his bucket of seawater into a large, scarred wooden tub. He is not alone. A younger man, perhaps his son or grandson, sits on a low stool, his back to you. Both are silhouetted against the warm light of a small irori hearth sunk into the floor, over which a cast-iron kettle hangs from a hook. But they are not warming themselves. Their attention is on the fisherman's tools. The old man is inspecting a length of netting, his fingers, gnarled and thick-knuckled, moving with a surprising, spider-like delicacy over the knots. He finds a tear, hisses through his teeth, a soft, regretful sound, and begins the meticulous process of repair. The younger man is working on a different piece of technology, a fishing lure. It's a composite thing of bone, shell, and feathers, designed to dance and flash in the dark water. He's tying it to a length of hand-braided horsehair line, his movements sure and practiced. The scene is one of silent, concentrated maintenance. Every piece of gear here is handmade, expensive in terms of time, and absolutely vital. A failed net or a lost lure isn't an inconvenience. It's a direct threat to tomorrow's meal and the Lord's tax. Your eyes adjust to the interior. The space is dominated by practicalities. Bunches of dried herbs and what look like strips of dried fish hang from the rafters. Earthenware jars line one wall. A single, well-worn fishing rod of laminated bamboo leans in a corner, a prized possession. On a shelf, you spot a small, crude wooden doll next to a folded piece of paper covered in script. It's a charm, likely from a local shrine, for protection at sea. The fisherman's world is a blend of supreme skill and profound superstition, and he makes no distinction between the two. The younger man finishes his knot, tests it with a firm tug, and sets the lure aside. He reaches for a ceramic tokuri sake bottle and two small cups. He pours one for the old man and one for himself. This is not a celebration, it's a ritual. The old man pauses his mending, takes the cup, and offers a barely perceptible nod. They drink in silence, a moment of shared fatigue and unspoken understanding. There's a widely accepted historical fact at play here. The primary fishing method for many coastal villages in this period was small-scale, inshore work using nets, lines, and traps from non-motorized boats. This was subsistence with a surplus for tax. But the charming, lesser-known detail is in the bait. For certain prized fish, fishermen would sometimes use fireflies. Captured in special cages and kept alive, a few fireflies attached to a hook or placed in a trap would glow with an irresistible, ghostly light in the deep night water, a tiny, living lantern to lure the catch. You imagine a jar of those cold, green sparks sitting on that same shelf, a secret weapon for a moonless night. The old man sets down his cup and returns to his net. The younger man stretches, his spine cracking audibly, and stands. He steps to the doorway, looking out past you toward the invisible sea, breathing in the night. He doesn't see you. His face, now fully in the lantern light, is younger than his movements suggested, but his eyes hold the same weather-beaten patience. Historians still argue whether the life of an Edo period fisherman was one of crushing, isolated poverty or of a rough, sustainable independence. Watching this man, feeling the focused calm of this yard, you sense it was neither romantic nor purely desperate. It was precarious, yes, but within that precarity was a deep literacy, a reading of tides, weather, wood, and knot, that provided its own kind of austere dignity. The man turns and slides the door almost shut, leaving only a crack of light. The audience is over. You back away from the fisherman's threshold, the soft shush of mending net following you as you retreat to the main path, your own direction pulled now by the stronger scent of salt and the pervasive, low-tide smell of yesterday's catch. The main path, now with the creek gurgling companionably beside it, delivers you to the waterline. The transition is sudden. The close-packed buildings fall away, and the world opens up to a vast, star-flecked sky and the immense, breathing darkness of the sea. You are standing on a rough, pebbled beach that slopes gently into the whispering black water. This is the village's workshop floor, its factory line, and the evidence of the day's labor is everywhere, in a state of half-finished processing. The first thing that hits you is the smell. It's not the rotten stench of a modern fishery harbor choked with diesel and waste. It's sharper, cleaner, more elemental. It is the pungent, briny aroma of fresh fish, of wet seaweed, of clean salt. But beneath it is another, more sour note, the smell of fish guts and blood, already being claimed by the scavenging crabs and gulls that will come at first light. Your feet crunch on a scattering of small, iridescent fish scales that glitter like misplaced sequins in the starlight. Long, low wooden racks, like skeletal tables, dominate the beach above the tide line. On them, arranged with an almost ceremonial neatness, are the day's lesser catches, sardines, mackerel, small silvery fish you can't name, laid out for drying. They look less like food and more like thousands of polished metal shavings, awaiting some alchemical process. Near the racks, large, shallow woven baskets hold heaps of glistening seaweed, its dark green and purple fronds coiled like sleeping serpents. This is nori, harvested from the strait's rocks, and it will be pressed into sheets, a valuable commodity. But the real activity, what's left of it in the dying light, is centered around a cluster of people, 3 women and an older boy, working near a large, flat stone slab. They are cleaning and sorting the last of the prime catch. You hang back, a shadow among the deeper shadows of beached boats. One woman, her sleeves tied back with cord, wields a short, viciously sharp knife. With a motion so fluid it seems unconscious, she slices the belly of a large, silvery fish, eviscerates it, and flicks the offal into a waiting bucket with a wet plop. Her hands are a red, slick blur, but her face is serene, detached. The fish, now a clean, open carcass, is passed to the next woman, who rinses it in a tub of seawater and lays it in another basket, where it will be packed in salt for transport or overnight storage. This is the nightly mending of the village's economic fabric. The tools of the trade are also here, undergoing their own repairs. Sitting apart on an upturned crate, a man is working on a trap, a complex, barrel-shaped cage made of woven bamboo strips. He's replacing a broken slat, his fingers weaving the new strip in with the old, a pattern as familiar as his own breath. Nearby, a great mound of netting, dark and heavy as a slain beast, is spread across the pebbles. Tomorrow, it will be inspected yard by yard. For now, it rests. You notice something odd about the boats pulled up on the beach. They are not all the same. Most are simple, elegant wooden sapper boats, pointed at both ends, maybe 15 feet long. But one, larger and broader, has a curious, soot-blackened patch on its interior hull, near the center. This is the telltale mark of a tabishi, a fire-fishing boat. The widely accepted practice was to use pine torches or burning resin to attract fish to the surface at night, a spectacular and effective method. But the lesser-known, slightly absurd detail is what they sometimes burned for fuel when resin was scarce: dried sardines. That's right. They would literally burn fish to catch more fish, the oily smoke creating a pungent, fish-scented beacon over the water. You picture the scene: the dark boat, the glowing, sputtering pile of tiny, desiccated corpses, the fishermen leaning over the gunwale, their faces lit by the greasy, utilitarian flame, hoping the smell of their burning cousins would bring the bigger family to dinner. The boy at the cleaning station gets up, stretches, and carries the heavy bucket of offal toward the water's edge. He doesn't dump it in. Instead, he wades in a few feet and, with a powerful heave, flings the contents far out into the dark strait. It's a final offering, or perhaps just good hygiene, returning the waste to the ecosystem that produced it. The plash is startlingly loud in the quiet. The women finish their last fish, rinse their knives and baskets in the seawater, and begin to tidy up. Their work is done. The day's catch has been processed, the night's net awaits its mending. Historians still argue whether the division of labor in these communities was strictly gendered: men on the boats, women on the shore, or if necessity and circumstance created more fluid roles, especially in smaller villages where every hand was needed to process a sudden, massive haul. Watching the efficient, unsentimental skill of these women, you suspect they could have run the boats just as well. But the social fabric, like the fishing nets, had its own established pattern, difficult to reweave. The group departs, heading back up the path with their empty tubs, their low, tired conversation fading into the rumble of the creek. You are left alone on the beach with the sleeping boats, the ranked fish slowly losing their luster under the stars, and the vast, murmuring patience of the sea. The village's interface with the deep has shut down for the night. The only thing left to do is to walk among the vessels, these strange wooden creatures hauled up on the land, and listen to what they have to say in their sleep. Leaving the briny rawness of the beach, You follow the cleaning women's path back toward the heart of the village, but your feet are drawn by the sound of the creek. It leads you to the communal well in its small, scuffed earth square. The area is not empty now. The well's wooden roof, a simple A-frame to keep rain out of the bucket, is a gathering point. The day's truly heavy labor is over, and this is where the village's social heartbeat becomes faintly audible, a soft pulse in the twilight. A woman is drawing water, the rope creaking over the wooden axle. She fills 2 buckets attached to the ends of a 10-bin, a shoulder pole, and with a practiced, rolling gait, carries them away, the buckets swaying in perfect counterbalance. She doesn't chat. This is a functional trip. But near the well's stone lip, 2 older men are sitting on a low, mossy wall that borders someone's vegetable patch. They are sharing a single, small pipe, the smoke from its Kizami tobacco almost sweet in the cool air. They are not looking at each other. They are gazing at the patch of sky above the rooftops, talking in the slow, spaced-out phrases of people who have known each other for 60 years. You catch only fragments, but they are revelatory. Said the headman from the next cove saw a kujira off the point. One murmurs, "Whale." A sighting of a whale was an event of monumental importance, a potential windfall of meat, oil, and bone that could lift the entire village's fortunes for a season. The other man grunts, a sound of deep skepticism. Currents are wrong this month. He saw a cloud. Their conversation is a living almanac, a blend of observation, superstition, and hard-won experience. Another figure approaches the well, a younger man with the distinctive, rolling gait of someone who spends his life on a shifting deck. He nods to the elders, a gesture of respect, but not subservience, and draws a quick drink of water using a bamboo ladle chained to the post. He drinks deeply, wipes his mouth, and speaks, his voice younger, more energetic. The mackerel are running thick past the red rock. Tomorrow, before the wind turns. It's not a suggestion, it's a report, offered to the elders. One of the old men removes the pipe from his mouth and gives a slow, single nod. This is the social hierarchy in action. It's not decreed by a distant shogun, it's owned by decades of reading the sea correctly. The young man's information is heard, assessed, and filed away. His status rises a tiny, imperceptible notch. You notice the well itself is not just a hole in the ground. The stone coping is carved, worn smooth by generations of hands. There are faint, weathered characters etched into one of the support posts. They are not an official edict. They look like a prayer, or perhaps a name. It was a widely accepted practice for villages to maintain such communal wells, and their cleanliness was a matter of collective pride and survival. But here's the slightly amusing historical detail. The primary method for keeping a well clean, beyond simple covering, often involved a carp. A single, hardy koi would be placed in the well to eat mosquito larvae and other insects, a living, swimming filtration system. You peer over the edge into the cool darkness below. You can't see the bottom, but you imagine a lone, fat fish gliding in silent circles, the unacknowledged guardian of the village's health, a scale-covered employee working the night shift for free. The young fisherman departs with another nod. The 2 elders continue their silent smoking. The social transaction is complete. This tiny square, with its worn oath and simple well, is the village's parliament, newsroom, and water cooler all in one. The conversations here dictate the next day's labors, settle minor disputes, and transmit the oral history of the strait. Historians still argue whether these fishing communities were truly egalitarian or if they harbored their own sharp, invisible class structures based on boat ownership, lineage, or sheer force of personality. Watching the dynamic between the seated elders and the standing youth, you sense it's a fluid thing. Authority here is as situational as the tide. It flows to whoever holds the most relevant knowledge for the moment. The location of the fish, the approach of a storm, the method to mend a particular tear in a particular net. It is a hierarchy of competence, and it is renegotiated every single day at this stone lip. A cool mist is beginning to coil up from the creek bed, blurring the edges of the lantern light. The old men, sensing the deepening chill, tap out their pipe and rise with soft groans. They shuffle off in different directions, melting into the dark lanes. The square is empty again, but the feeling of a central hub remains. The heartbeat slows, but the blood, the information, the social fluid, has been circulated. You turn away from the well, and a new, powerful scent cuts through the clean smell of water and damp earth. A sharp, nose-clearing, salty tang that speaks of a different kind of preservation. It leads you down a side lane, away from the homes, toward the source of what can only be described as the village's most pungent and most vital alchemy. The scent is a hook in your senses, pulling you down a narrow alley that runs behind the main row of houses. It's the smell of concentrated ocean, of life arrested and transformed. It's salty, yes, but with a deeply fermented, umami-rich edge that makes the back of your throat tighten. You round a corner and the source reveals itself. The village's open-air preservation workshop, a place of salt-scented alchemy that turns fleeting bounty into lasting commodity. It's a larger, cleared space backed against a rocky outcrop, sheltered from the worst of the wind but open to the air. The scene is one of orderly, silent industry, even at this hour. Long, shallow wooden vats, dark with moisture, are arranged in rows. In them, fish, mostly the smaller, silvery types you saw on the beach, are laid like geological strata with coarse, grey sea salt. The salt isn't the fine, white powder of a modern kitchen. It's harvested from evaporated seawater in tidal pools, containing minerals that give it a faint, greyish hue. This is the first step in making shiozuke, salt-cured fish, a staple that will last for months. But the true olfactory champions are the clusters of large ceramic jars, some as tall as your waist, squatting under a thatched lean-to. Their tops are weighted down with heavy, clean stones. These are the fermenting pots. From them emanates the powerful, complex aroma of shotsuru or ashiri, fermented fish sauces, the essential condiments and cooking bases of the region. This is the fish-based counterpart to soy sauce, a pungent, brown liquid that is the soul of local cuisine. The process is simple in theory. Fish, usually sardines or anchovies, are packed in jars with salt and left to ferment for months, sometimes years, under the sun. In practice, it's an art. The result is a flavor so potent and essential that its absence would make half the village's food taste like empty air. An old woman, her back as straight as a barrel stave despite her years, moves between the jars. She is the alchemist. She checks the stone weights, listens to the faint, gurgling whispers from within the ceramics, and uses a long, polished wooden dipper to draw a small sample from one jar. She sniffs it, her eyes closing in profound concentration. She doesn't taste it. The smell tells her everything. She gives a slight, satisfied nod and replaces the lid. Her domain is separate from the fisherman's. This is a specialized, revered knowledge passed down through the women of certain families. It is widely accepted that such fermented fish sauces were a crucial source of protein and flavor, especially in remote regions where soybeans were scarce. But the lesser-known, slightly grim detail is about the first run. The very best, most concentrated liquid from the first pressing of these fermented fish was sometimes reserved not for eating, but for a very specific purpose, as a high-quality, weather-resistant wood stain and preservative for the fishing boats themselves. The village literally painted its most valuable assets with the distilled essence of its catch. You watch as she tends to her jars with a priestess's solemnity. Nearby, on raised racks, thin strips of fish, tuna, perhaps, or squid, are smoking gently over smoldering fires of hardwood and seaweed. This isn't hot smoking. It's cold smoking, a days-long process that infuses the flesh with a deep, smoky flavor and dries it to a leathery toughness that will sustain a crew on a long voyage. The smoke is fragrant, almost sweet, weaving with the sharper smells of salt and fermentation to create the village's unique atmospheric signature. It's a smell of patience, of foresight. It says, "We know the sea gives and takes. We are preparing for the taking." Historians still argue whether the development of these advanced fish preservation techniques was a direct driver of population stability in coastal regions or merely a response to it. Did the ability to store fish allow villages to grow larger, or did larger villages necessitate the invention of better storage? Standing in this clearing, the answer seems obvious. It was a conversation. The sea offered abundance in boasts, and the human mind, through trial and error, through sniffing jars and layering salt, invented time itself, a way to stretch a September catch into a February meal. The old woman finishes her rounds and sits on a stump, taking a rest. She looks out over her domain, her face impassive. She holds in her nose the memory of 100 seasons, the success or failure of each year's alchemy encoded in scents only she can decipher. She is not just preserving fish, she is preserving the future. The mist from the creek is thickening, mingling with the wood smoke to form a spectral haze that blurs the edges of the jars and vats. The scene takes on a dreamlike, almost cauldron-like quality. You retreat from the alchemist's clearing, the powerful smells clinging to your clothes, a testament to the work that never truly stops. As you return to the tighter lanes, a different kind of light catches your eye, not the flickering orange of flame or lantern, but a soft, diffuse, buttery glow emanating from a paper window, pulling you toward a moment of domestic quiet. The glow is a pale, inviting rectangle in the weathered wood of a house wall. It comes from a shoji screen, its lattice framework covered in washi paper, which acts as a perfect diffuser for the gentle light within. You find yourself pausing in the narrow lane, not as a voyeur, but as a witness to a quiet tableau. This is the private counterpart to the public workshop of the beach and the fermenting yard. This is the interior world, the domain of the kamadu hearth and the sleeping mat. You stand far enough back that you are a shapeless shadow in the dark lane, but close enough to perceive the scene as a living silhouette play. The internal layout is simple, revealed by the shadow puppetry on the screen. You see the low, rectangular outline of an irori sunken hearth in the center of the room, its coals banked to a dull red glow. The light source is an Andan lamp, its flame turned low, sitting on a wooden chest. Its light paints the paper screen with a warm, pulsing gold. A figure moves across the screen, a woman, her silhouette defined by the practical knot of her hair and the loose drape of her kimono. She is clearing a few small, lacquered bowls from a low tray. Her movements are economical, tired but not rushed. She carries them out of view, and you hear the soft clatter of pottery being placed in a wooden tub. She returns, and another silhouette enters the frame, a child, small and unsteady. The woman kneels, and for a moment the two silhouettes merge into one as she helps the child into a sleeping robe. It's a silent, tender interaction, all the more intimate for its lack of audible detail. There is no lecture here on family values in the Edo period. There is just a back, bending in gentle care, and a small, trusting form. Your eyes adjust to the nuances of the shadow play. You can make out other shapes, a simple wooden tansu chest against a wall, a bamboo drying rack suspended from the ceiling with a few dark garments hanging from it, the elegant curve of a single tokuri sake bottle on a shelf. The space is Spartan, almost austere by modern standards, but every object has a clear purpose and place. It speaks of a life where possessions are curated by necessity, not accumulated by whim. A widely accepted historical fact is that the average commoner's dwelling in this period was a single, multipurpose room, with spaces defined by use, not walls. The family ate, slept, and lived in this one space, with woven mushiro mats rolled out at night for bedding. The woman guides the child to a corner of the room where a dark, rectangular lump suggests a folded futon. She tucks the child in, her hand a gentle, smoothing shadow on the smaller silhouette's head. Then she returns to the hearth. She sits, her posture relaxing from its functional stoop into a moment of stillness. She picks up a small, dark object. It takes you a moment to recognize the action. She is sewing. Not mending a net with thick twine, but fine, precise work, perhaps reinforcing a hem, or attaching a small stitch to a garment. The needle must be tiny, but the focused inclination of her head is unmistakable. This is her time. This is the quiet after the engine of the day has been shut down. And here is the lesser-known, charming detail that this scene conjures, the source of her light. The oil in the Anden lamp is likely not expensive rapeseed oil tonight. For close, fine work like this, she might be using the clear, bright oil rendered from sardines. Yes, the humble sardine, once again proving its worth. Crushed and boiled, these little fish yielded an oil that burned relatively cleanly and without excessive smoke, perfect for indoor tasks. So while her husband or brother might have been burning sardines on the water to attract fish, she might be burning their essence to see a needle's eye. The village's economy was a closed, ingenious loop. She sews for a few minutes, a picture of concentrated calm. Historians still argue whether the domestic sphere in these communities offered women a significant degree of autonomy and respect, given their crucial roles in processing, finance, and household management, or if it was still a world of unacknowledged, patriarchal constraint. Watching this silent figure, master of her own small hearth, tending to the future, the child, and maintaining the present, the sewing, you sense a power that is quiet but profound. Her domain, though physically small, is the bedrock upon which the fisherman's daring is built. Without this order, this calm, this mending of the social fabric, the mending of the nets would be meaningless. She finishes her stitch, bites the thread with a snap you almost think you hear, and sets her sewing aside. She moves to the Anden and, with a soft breath, extinguishes the flame. The golden rectangle of the shoji vanishes instantly, plunging your section of the lane into deeper darkness. The house is now just a black shape against the slightly lighter sky. But the image of that interior world, the red coals, the bending silhouette, the patient needle, lingers in your mind's eye, a snapshot of private warmth in a village built for public toil. As your eyes readjust to the starlight, you turn away, and your gaze is drawn upward, to where the lane ends at a small rise, marked by a different kind of light. The steady, unmoving glow of a stone lantern, standing sentinel before a simple, quiet structure. The stone lantern's light is not like the flickering, living glow of the paper Anden. It is a constant, pale eye carved into a block of dark, local rock, its flame sheltered from the wind by a small roof. It illuminates not a doorway, but a path of 3 rough stone steps leading up to a tiny, thatched roof structure no larger than a tool shed. This is the village's shrine, its spiritual outpost. It is not grand. It is humble, almost apologetic in its simplicity, but its placement on this slight rise, overlooking the lanes and the invisible sea, gives it a palpable gravity. You climb the steps. The shrine is a hakora, a miniature sanctuary. Its wooden walls are dark and unpainted, the thatch on its roof thick and overhanging. A simple rope of woven rice straw, a shimenawa, hangs across the front, marking the boundary between the mundane and the sacred. Tied to it are a few folded paper strips, gohi, rustling like brittle leaves in the night breeze. This is not a place for elaborate ceremony conducted by a visiting priest. This is a place for quick, desperate, or thankful whispers from people who need to speak to something larger than the sea. You peer inside the small offering box. There is no money. Instead, You see a few dried slices of persimmon, a small, perfect shell, and a single, weathered Daruma doll with one eye painted in, a wish for a safe childbirth or a successful boat launch, its fulfillment marked by the painting of the second eye. The offerings are direct, tangible: food, beauty, a promise. On a low shelf within the shrine's shadows sits a simple wooden figure. It's too dark to see details, but its shape suggests a seated man, perhaps a Jizo Bosatsu, the protector of children and travelers, or more likely Ibisu, the god of fishermen and luck, one of the 7 lucky gods, often depicted with a fishing rod and a fat sea bream. The air here is different. The scents of fish and fermentation are muted, replaced by the clean smell of damp stone, old wood, and the faint, sweet incense of burned senko sticks, long since extinguished. It is a pocket of quiet. You can see why someone would come here, not just to pray, but to think. The view from the steps encompasses the thatched rooftops descending to the black void of the strait. It is a reminder of the scale of things. The village is a tiny, fragile clasp holding the mountain to the sea. A widely accepted historical fact is that Shinto, with its focus on local kami spirits, and Buddhism, with its promises of salvation, coexisted seamlessly in the Edo period, especially in rural areas. This shrine is likely a hybrid, a physical space where thanks could be given to the local sea kami for a good catch, and prayers for safe passage could be offered to a Buddhist guardian like Jizo. But the lesser-known, practical detail is what often happened around such shrines. This slightly elevated, cleared space wasn't just for prayer. It frequently served as the village's unofficial weather observatory and signal point. A change in the wind, a shift in the cloud patterns over the distant headland, or, most crucially, the first sighting of returning boats would often be noted here first. The old man smoking by the well might have the almanac in his head, but the eyes watching from the shrine steps had the horizon. As you stand there, a figure does approach. It's the young fisherman from the well, the one who reported the mackerel. He walks with purpose but without haste. He climbs the steps, passes before you without a glance. You are part of the shrine's shadow now, and stands before the rope. He doesn't clap or chant. He simply bows his head, his hands pressed together in silent supplication for a moment. Then, from inside his kimono, he produces a small object. It's a fishing hook, a good one, hand-forged from tempered steel, a valuable tool. He holds it for a second, then carefully places it on the offering shelf beside the persimmon. It's a sacrifice of real worth, a piece of his livelihood offered for protection of that same livelihood. It is faith expressed not in words, but in pragmatic metal. He bows again, turns, and descends the steps, melting back into the lane, his offering gleaming dully in the stone lantern's light. Historians still argue whether folk beliefs like these, the offerings to Ibisu, the charms in the fisherman's house, were a deeply held, animistic worldview for the common people, or merely a form of spiritual insurance, a can't-out practice alongside their very practical skills. Watching the hook glint on the shelf, you feel the argument is pointless. For the fisherman, the skill of his hands and the favor of the god are not separate things. They are the two strands of the same line, both necessary to pull sustenance from the unpredictable deep. The hook is his prayer made manifest. You leave the shrine's quiet sphere, the stone lantern's eye watching your back as you descend. The spiritual interlude is over, and the lane now leads you back toward the more earthly commerce of the village. From a building near what might be the headman's house, you hear a new sound, not the sea or a hearth, but the distinct, dry rustle of paper and the clink of weights on a scale. A transaction is concluding, and with it, a thread connecting this isolated cove to the world beyond the mountains is about to be snipped for the night. The sound draws you to a building slightly more substantial than its neighbors. It has a deep, sheltered eaves and a wooden platform out front that is clear of the ever-present mud. This is the village's tenuous link to the cash economy and the wider archipelago. The door is slid open, and inside, by the light of 2 lanterns, you see the tail end of a commercial transaction. A traveling merchant, a shonin, is packing his goods. He's a different creature from the fisherman. His clothes, while practical, are of a slightly finer, darker cotton, and he wears tabi socks and proper sandals, not straw zori. His face is not weathered by salt spray but lined by the sun of mountain passes. He's finishing his business with a man who must be the village headman or a designated buyer. On the platform between them sits a small, finely balanced 10-bin scale. The merchant is carefully placing his brass weights into a felt-lined wooden box. The evidence of the trade is still visible. Several woven bales of dried, pressed seaweed, the valuable noi, are stacked to one side, ready to be strapped to the merchant's pack horse, which you can now hear snuffling patiently in a lean-to around back. In return, the village has received goods that do not come from the sea. You see a small pile of iron tools, new fishing hooks, a few long needles for net mending, a single, precious handsaw. Next to them are bundles of dried foodstuffs, katsubushi, dried bonito flakes for broth, pickled plums amaboshi, and what looks like a sack of millet. But most intriguing is a small stack of folded paper, washi for repairing screens and lanterns, and a few ceramic bottles of soy sauce from the interior. This is the luxury import. The merchant is talkative, a stream of information as he packs. And the checkpoint at the pass is saying the daimyo's procession will come through next month, so prices on lacquerware in the castle town have doubled. He says, his voice a rapid, urban cadence that sounds foreign here. The headman listens, nodding slowly, absorbing this intelligence from the world beyond the strait. The gossip is as valuable as the goods. It tells him about market fluctuations, political movements, potential disruptions to their meager trade. It is widely accepted that during the Edo period, a network of traveling merchants like this one was the lifeblood of information and goods for isolated villages, operating under the strictures of the Sankinkotai system and domainal borders. But the lesser-known, amusing detail is about one of their most common carry-on items, news. Not just gossip, but physical, printed kawaraban, crude, single-page broadsides reporting on scandals, natural disasters, or victories. They were the tabloids of their day, often sensationalized, sometimes entirely fabricated, and passed from hand to hand until they disintegrated. You can imagine one, now crumpled and stained, being unfolded in this very doorway, its outrageous story of a ghost in Kyoto or a two-headed calf in Osaka being read aloud by flickering light to wide-eyed villagers. The headman hands over a small, cloth-wrapped bundle. The final payment, likely in coin, a portion of the village's collective cash from sold fish and seaweed. The merchant tucks it securely into an inner pocket with a final, satisfied pat. His work here is done. He offers a formal bow, which the headman returns. The social ritual is precise, a dance of mutual need performed at the edge of the world. As the merchant turns to finish securing his packs, you get a closer look at his equipment. His high oak, the box frame backpack, is a masterpiece of practical design. It's laden but balanced. Tied to its sides are straw sandals for replacement, a small rain cloak of oiled paper, and a bamboo water canteen. This man will walk over mountains to the next village, then the next, a human capillary in the body of the nation. Historians still argue whether these itinerant merchants were viewed with suspicion as outsiders and sharp dealers, or welcomed as essential lifelines and the only source of novelty in a repetitive life. Watching the headman's expression, a mix of weary respect and clear relief that the haggling is over, you suspect it was both. The merchant was a necessity, like salt. But like salt, you wouldn't want too much of him at once. He disrupted the closed loop. With efficient, practiced motions, The merchant hefts his pack onto the platform, then onto his own back. He gives a final nod, lights a small portable lantern attached to a pole, and heads around back for his horse. The headman slides the door shut with a definitive thump. The brief window to the outside world is closed. The lane is quiet again, but the air feels different. It carries the faint, lingering scent of the horse, of dust from far-off roads, and of the ink from the now-hidden broadsheet. The village has taken in its supplies and its news, and will now digest them in isolation. You follow the sound of the merchant's departing footsteps and the clop of his horse's hooves for a few yards, but they soon fade, heading up the steep path that leads inland, over the spine of the mountain. Your own path turns back, inevitably, toward the water, toward the village's reason for being. The merchant's world of paper and gossip recedes, replaced once more by the solid, silent shapes of the boats hauled up on the shore, waiting. The merchant's world of chatter and coin evaporates behind you as you return to the beach. The tide has gone out further, exposing a wider expanse of wet, rippled sand that gleams faintly under the stars, and the pebble berm where the boats rest seems higher, more pronounced. You walk among them now, these vessels beached for the night. Up close, they are not mere transportation, they are individuals, each with a personality born of use and repair. They rest on their sides, propped up by worn wooden stanchions. Their hulls, curved like the ribs of great sea creatures, are smooth to the touch, worn silky by endless water and countless hands. The wood is not uniform. You can see patches where a plank has been replaced, the newer wood a different shade, a scar telling a story of a hidden rock or a storm-driven log. The grain on some is tight and straight, on others wildly knotted, a testament to the trees that grew on the mountain behind you, each chosen for a specific strength or flexibility. The smell here is pure, soaked wood, old tar, and the clean, mineral scent of wet sand. You run your hand along one gunwale. Your fingers find notches, small and precise, carved into the wood. At first they seem random, but as you move along the boat, you see a pattern, groups of 5, with a longer line crossing through them. A tally. A record of catches, or maybe of trips. This boat has a name, too, carved near the bow in elegant, weathered characters, Shiokes. Salt Wind. A good name. The next boat over is plainer, its hull stained darker from the soot of the fire fishing patch. It has no carved name, but painted near its stern, in fading red oxide pigment, is a crude, charming image of a plump sea bream, a tai, the fish of good fortune. It's a hope made visible. You crouch to look at the construction. These are clinker-built boats, meaning their planks overlap like scales, fastened with hundreds of hand-forged iron rivets, each clenched over a small square rove on the inside. The caulking between the planks isn't modern rubber, but twisted strands of hemp fiber, soaked in pine tar, hammered into the seams. It's a widely accepted fact that Japanese boat building of this era, while regionally varied, was a masterclass in joining wood without nails, using intricate lock joints and wooden pegs. But the lesser-known, slightly poetic detail is in the final sealant. After the tarred hemp was set, the seams were often paid with a paste made from funori, a type of edible seaweed, mixed with lime and Tinoko clay. Yes, they literally glued their boats together with a paste made from seaweed and doubt. It was effective, flexible, and repairable by anyone with a bucket and a stir stick. The village's 2 great harvests, fish and seaweed, thus combined to create the vessel that connected them. At the stern of one boat, you see its steering oar, the row, lashed securely along the hull. Its handle is dark and shiny from the grip of generations. Nearby, coils of rope sit in baskets, not haphazardly, but in perfect, concentric loops, ready to be flung without a snag. You see the different types, rough hemp for anchor lines, softer, braided shuro palm fiber for nets, and the precious, strong horsehair for fishing lines. Each has its place, its sound, its smell. This is a library of tensile strength. You stand in the center of this sleeping fleet. The silence is profound, but it's a pregnant silence. These boats are not dead things. They are resting energy. In a few hours, they will be pushed, grunting and scraping, down the pebbles into the water, and their hollow bellies will become living spaces for men and tools and hope. Historians still argue whether the design of these inshore fishing boats reached a perfect, static equilibrium with their environment during the Edo period, or if constant, subtle innovation was occurring, passed on as the way my father did it. Looking at the variations, the rake of a bow here, the depth of a hole there, you see the argument etched in the wood itself. It was both. The fundamental, elegant template was sound, but each boat bore the marks of its maker's personal hypotheses about the sea, tested daily in the only laboratory that mattered. A soft crunch on the pebbles makes you turn. An old fisherman, perhaps the one from the threshold, is making a final rounds. He doesn't look at the boats, he listens to them. He places a hand on a hull, as if checking for a fever. He tests the tension of a rope lashing. He is a doctor on a nighttime ward, ensuring his charges are stable for the morning's trial. Satisfied, he turns and shuffles back up the path, leaving you alone once more with the salt wind and the dreaming boats. As he goes, a new sound, faint and melodic, drifts down from the village, not the sound of work, but of muted celebration. It pulls you away from the water's edge, back toward the clustered houses, where a different kind of community flickers briefly to life. The sound is a thread of music, thin and reedy, woven with the low murmur of gathered voices. It doesn't come from the main lane or the headman's house, but from a slightly larger dwelling set back in a grove of wind-stunted pines. Light spills from its open doorway and several paper windows, painting the ground with overlapping golden rectangles. This is no raucous festival, it's a subdued, moonlit feast, a pocket of warmth against the vast, cool indifference of the night. You approach, staying in the shadows of the trees. Inside, you see perhaps a dozen people gathered around the central orrery. The hearth fire is built a little higher tonight, its light dancing on intent, smiling faces. The reedy music comes from a shakuhachi bamboo flute played by an old man in the corner, his eyes closed, his notes wandering like a gentle stream over the conversation. The air that wafts out is rich with the smell of food not eaten every day, the savory scent of fish grilling directly over the coals, likely a prize Thai or a fat mackerel, and the sweet, comforting aroma of steamed millet mixed with chestnuts. This is a celebration, but of what? A betrothal? A son's first successful solo catch? The safe return from a risky voyage? You can't tell, and it doesn't matter. The purpose is the gathering itself. You see the young fisherman who offered the hook at the shrine, now relaxed, laughing at something said by the woman who was sewing. The old alchemist from the fermenting jars sits with a cup of sake, her stern face softened by the firelight. Even the headman is here, his official demeanor relaxed. For a few hours, the hierarchy of skill and age melts into the simple hierarchy of the circle around the fire. A woman passes around a large ceramic plate of the grilled fish, and everyone takes a small piece with their fingers, eating with unself-conscious delight. The sake bottle makes its rounds. The conversation is a soft tapestry of local gossip, exaggerated fishing stories, and comfortable silences. It's widely accepted that community bonds in villages like this were forged in shared labor and cemented in rare moments of shared leisure like this one. But the lesser-known, delightful detail is about the music itself. The shakuhachi player might be good, but the real star of most such gatherings was often the kokiriko or the shamisen, if someone had one. Those were expensive. More commonly, the rhythm and melody would be supplied by voice and by the percussion found in the kitchen. The clapping of hands, the tapping of chopsticks on bowls, and most popularly, the rhythmic thumping of an upside-down wooden oak washing tub, used as an improvised drum. You can almost hear it now, the deep, hollow thump-thump-thump keeping time under the flute's melody, a sound of pure, inventive joy. A child, the one you saw being put to bed, now drowsy but fighting sleep, is passed from lap to lap, a warm bundle of contentment. For this moment, the sea is not a taskmaster, but a provider. The mountain at their backs is not a barrier, but a shelter. The immense pressures of tax and subsistence are held at bay by the fire's circumference. This is the village remembering it is not just a machine, but a family. The flutist finishes his tune to soft, appreciative murmurs. He sets the instrument down and accepts a cup of sake. In the lull, an older woman, her voice cracked but clear, begins to sing. It's not a formal song, but a local work chant, a kuta, its rhythms born of pulling nets or rowing against the current. A few others join in, their voices low and unison. The lyrics are simple, about the color of the dawn sky predicting the catch, about the longing for a safe return. It's the village's anthem, encoded in melody. Historians still argue whether these tightly knit communities experienced higher levels of personal contentment and mental well-being than their modern counterparts, despite the material poverty and physical hardship. Watching the firelight on these relaxed, connected faces, hearing the communal hum of their song, you are offered a compelling, if fleeting, piece of evidence. Their struggles were shared, visible, and directly tied to their survival. There was no ambiguity about the value of one's labor, or the importance of one's neighbor. The song ends. The fire crackles. The moment of collective focus dissipates back into softer, paired conversations. The feast is winding down. The child has finally succumbed to sleep, curled in its mother's lap. People begin to stretch, to yawn, to think of the short walk home and the pre-dawn hour that will follow this respite. You slip away from the pine grove before the gathering fully breaks up, carrying the echo of the flute and the image of the firelit circle with you. But as you move back into the quieter lanes, you are drawn toward a sound you missed before, a steady, rhythmic, rasping scrape, coming from a workshop that never truly closed. It is the sound of the unseen hands that keep the visible world from fraying at the edges. The rasping scrape is a gritty, patient sound, like a slow insect chewing wood. It leads you away from the warm glow of the feast, down a side alley so narrow you have to turn slightly sideways, to where a single, stubborn light burns in a lean-to attached to the side of a storehouse. This is the workshop of the unseen hands. If the fisherman is the village's spearhead and the net mender its seamstress, then this is its bone setter, its sharpener, its keeper of edges. Under a sheltered roof open on one side to the night air, an old man works. He is the village's kaji, the blacksmith and tool mender, though his forge is cold now. At this hour, he works in wood and stone. He sits on a low stool, a thick leather apron covering his lap. In his hands is a curved, wooden paddle, an oar from one of the boats. He is scraping its blade with a piece of rough, volcanic cairn stone, smoothing out the nicks and gashes inflicted by rocks and sand, reshaping its water-slicing edge. Each long, firm pull of the stone sends a shower of pale, damp wood shavings curling to the packed earth floor, which already lies under a fragrant carpet of them. The smell is incredible. The sweet, resinous scent of freshly exposed cedar, cut with the mineral tang of the pumice stone. His workspace is a museum of maintenance. On a rack hang files and rasps of different coarseness. A wooden tub of water sits nearby, for soaking warped wood or tempering metal. On a bench lie the patients awaiting his care, a broken fish spear with its iron tip being rehafted, a wooden pulley block with a worn groove, a cracked oak tub bound with a temporary bamboo brace. This is where broken things come to be made whole again, not replaced. The concept of disposable goods is as foreign here as a mechanical clock. Every object is an investment of materials and, more importantly, of skill. Its life must be extended indefinitely. You watch as he finishes with the oar, runs a calloused thumb along its edge, and nods. He sets it aside in a rack with others. Next, he picks up a fisherman's knife, the kind used for gutting on the beach. He examines its blade against the lantern light, squinting. It's dulled from a day's work on scales and bone. He doesn't go to a grinding wheel. Instead, he selects a long, narrow whetstone from a line of them, each a different shade of gray. He wets it from a dipper and, with a musician's perfect rhythm, begins to slide the blade along its surface. Shick, 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 shick. The sound is cleaner, sharper than the scraping. It's the sound of potential being restored. A widely accepted historical fact is that the sharpening and care of tools was a daily ritual, as vital as eating. A dull knife meant wasted time, spoiled meat, and danger. But the lesser-known, ingenious detail is what they used for the finest, polishing hone. After the whetstone, the ultimate edge was often achieved by stropping the blade on your own forearm. That's right. The smooth, oiled skin of the arm, sometimes with a faint rubbing of fine abrasive paste, provided the perfect flexible surface to align the microscopic teeth of the edge to a razor finish. The tool and the body were part of the same integrated system. He tests the edge not on paper, but by shaving a single, gossamer-thin curl from a piece of dried kaya reed. It slices through without a sound. Satisfied, he sets the knife down. His work is never done, because use is never-ending. He might be the most important man in the village, and yet he works in near total anonymity, acknowledged only when something breaks. Historians still argue whether such specialized, non-fishing roles, the smith, the net maker, the sake brewer, were full-time occupations in a small village or merely the side duties of a fisherman with a particular knack. Watching the old man's absolute, undivided focus, the specialized arsenal of his tools, you lean toward the former. This level of skill required dedication. He was likely paid in fish, in rice, in help mending his own roof. His currency was the smooth pull of an oar through water and the effortless slice of a knife through flesh, the unspoken thanks of a village that functioned. He stands, his knees cracking like two pieces of firewood, and moves to douse his lantern. But before he does, he looks out into the darkness of the alley, directly toward where you stand. He doesn't seem to see you, but he seems to sense the presence of the night, of the village sleeping around him. He gives a small, almost imperceptible nod, as if to the darkness itself, acknowledging his partnership with it. He is the warden of readiness. Then he pinches the lantern wick, and his corner of the world vanishes into black. You are left in the sudden dark, the fragrant smell of cedar shavings and stone dust hanging in the damp air. The feast's music is gone. The mending scrape is silenced. The village is sinking into its deepest rest. But as you stand there, listening to the profound quiet, you realize it is not complete. A new, subtle shift is occurring. It's not a sound, but a feeling, a changing of the guard at the cellular level of the village's life. The time for mending is over. The time for preparation is about to begin. The deep quiet after the craftsman's light goes out is not empty. It's a held breath. You stand in the alley, the scent of cut cedar still fresh in your nose, and you feel the change before you hear it. It's in the quality of the darkness. The black is no longer a blanket smothering activity, it's a thinning veil. The stars seem just a fraction less brilliant, as if a ghost of light is beginning to press from the other side of the world. This is the hour when the village's sentinels trade places, a seamless, wordless changing of the guard. You make your way back to the main path. The lanterns have mostly gutted out, their oil spent. Only one or two still cling to a dim, red ember at the wick's tip. From the direction of the headman's house, you hear it. the soft, sliding shoom of a heavy wooden door being opened with immense care to avoid a squeak. A figure emerges, wrapped in a dark cloak. This is the Night Watch, the Yaban. His job is not to fight bandits. The isolation is protection enough. But to watch for fire, the eternal enemy of thatch and wood, and to listen for the weather turning. He has spent the long hours walking the silent lanes, checking the mooring lines of the few boats left in the water, feeling the wind on his wet finger. Now, his vigil is ending. He stands for a moment on the step, stretching stiff shoulders, and looks east, toward the unseen sea. He sees what you feel, the faintest lightening of the sky from pitch to a deep, washed-out indigo over the mountain ridge. It's not dawn, but the promise of it. As he stands, another figure materializes from a lane. It's a fisherman, the young one from the feast, but the laughter is gone from his face, replaced by a placid, focused calm. He carries a small wooden bucket. The two men meet in the middle of the path. No words are exchanged. The watchman simply gives a slow, single nod. The fisherman returns it. The transfer of duty is complete. The man who guarded the village's sleep hands the mantle to the man who will harvest its reason for being. The watchman shuffles off toward his bed. The fisherman continues down the path toward the beach, his step light and silent. But he is not the only one. From other lanes, other shadows are converging. You see the old fisherman from the threshold, moving with a stiff but determined gait. Another man, younger, yawning silently into his fist. They move like ghosts drawn by a silent bell. There is no conversation, no shouted greetings. This is a ritual performed in near silence. It is widely accepted that fishing communities operated on rhythms dictated by tides and light, often beginning their day hours before sunrise. But the lesser-known, poignant detail is the first walk. Before even going to the boats, it was common for a fisherman to make a quiet circuit past the homes of his crewmates, a silent roll call in the dark. A missing light, an unopened door, could signal illness or trouble, allowing for a last-minute adjustment. It was a safety net woven from habit and mutual obligation, invisible but strong. You follow at a distance, a shadow among these purposeful shadows. The group, now 5 or 6 strong, reaches the beach. They do not immediately go to their boats. They stand in a loose cluster at the water's edge, facing the strait. For a full minute, they are utterly still, silhouettes against the slightly less black water. They are reading the night with senses you lack, feeling the humidity on their skin, tasting the air on their tongues, listening to the tone of the wave lap on the pebbles. They are diagnosing the sea. One of them crouches, dips a hand in the water, and brings it to his lips, tasting the salinity. He nods, seemingly satisfied. This is the final briefing, conducted without words. The intelligence gathered at the well, the prayer offered at the shrine, the gut feeling born of decades, all of it is synthesized in this communal silence. Historians still argue whether the success of these pre-industrial fishermen was due more to accumulated, secret knowledge passed within families or to the free sharing of information within the cooperative village unit. Watching these men, their individual expertise momentarily merged into a single, assessing consciousness, you see the answer. It was a braid of both. The secret tricks of a lure or a net-setting technique might be guarded, but the basic, vital facts of the sea at this moment were communal property. Their survival depended on it. One man breaks the stillness, turning toward the boats. The others follow. The silent phase is over. Now begins the soft, purposeful noise of preparation. The scuff of sandals on pebbles, the low grunt as a stanchion is pulled away, the muffled thud of a tool basket being placed in a hull. The changing of the guard is complete. The village has passed from the defensive, inward-turned state of night into the offensive, outward-reaching state of dawn. You leave them to their work, stepping back up the path to a vantage point where you can watch the next, most dramatic act, their departure into the waking world. You find your vantage point on a low, flat rock where the path from the beach meets the first house. From here, you have a clear view of the pebbled shore and the water beyond, which is now distinctly lighter. The sky over the mountains is a band of deep cobalt, bleeding into a soft, bruised purple above the black silhouette of the opposite shore. The strait is no longer a void, but a vast, shifting sheet of grey satin. The fishermen are no longer shadows. They are dark, moving shapes against the grey, their movements economical and synchronized. The silence of the convergence is gone, replaced by a language of low sounds. The scrape of hulls on stone as the boats are pushed, inch by groaning inch, down the berm. The soft, guttural chant, so-re, so-re, that coordinates their pushes, not shouted, but breathed in unison. The splash as a bow finally kisses the water, a sound both crisp and final. Each boat takes a crew of 2 or 3. One man steadies the vessel in the gentle surf while the others load the baskets, the mended nets, coiled with precision, the bucket of bait, likely small, wriggling crabs or pieces of yesterday's catch, the stone anchors, the water canteen, the small, charmed doll from the shelf. You watch the old fisherman and the young one from the feast work together on the boat named Shiokaze. Their partnership is a well-oiled machine. They understand each other's strength and timing. As the young man pushes the stern, the old man is already stepping over the gunwale, his balance perfect on the rocking hull. They are the first off. The old man takes the steering oar at the stern. The younger one moves to the bow, picks up a long, single-bladed paddle, and with a few deep, powerful strokes, pushes them away from the land. The boat glides out onto the grey plain, a black cutout against the shimmering water. One by one, the other boats follow. The fire-fishing boat, with its soot-stained patch, is the last to go, needing an extra hand to shove its broader hull. Soon, 5 dark shapes are on the water, their outlines sharpening as the light grows. They do not head out together in a fleet. Each boat peels off on its own course, a decision made in that silent huddle on the beach. One angles north, hugging the coast toward the red rock. Another points its bow directly across the strait, aiming for a deep channel known only to them. The Shiokaze moves with purpose toward the center, where the young man had reported the mackerel running. They become individual specks, then mere suggestions of movement on the vast grey canvas. This is the moment of supreme vulnerability and absolute purpose. The village, now at your back, is a dormant hive. Out there on the water, its life force is exposed, entrusted to skill, luck, and the mercy of the deep. It is a widely accepted fact that the mortality rate for fishermen in this era was staggeringly high, from storms, accidents, and simple disappearances. But the lesser-known, heartening counterpoint was the system of mutual aid. If a boat was in trouble, a sprung leak, an injured man, the others, even from a distance, were bound by an unbreakable code to assist, often at great risk to themselves. Their competition was for the catch, but their solidarity was for survival. You imagine the watchful glances they'll keep, not on the horizon for enemies, but on each other's tiny, rocking shapes. The light is coming quickly now. The cobalt band has ignited into a wash of orange and pink at its lower edge. The water is no longer grey, but a cool, luminous silver, and you can see the first delicate ripples of a breeze beginning to skate across its surface. The boats are now stark black ink blots on a shining plate. You can see the dip and rise of the paddles, the occasional flash of a wet blade catching the nascent light. They are so small against the immensity. The silence that returns to the beach is profound, but it's a different silence than the night's. It's an attentive silence, a waiting silence. The village holds its breath, its eyes turned outward. Historians still argue whether the daily launch was viewed with dread or with a sense of routine, even pride. Was it a terrifying gamble or simply the vogue? Watching the clean, untroubled lines of the Shiokaze as it grows smaller, you suspect it was both, simultaneously. The dread was a constant, low hum in the background, the respect for a power that could not be controlled. The routine was the armor they wore against it. The pride was in the smoothness of the launch, the perfect knot, the well-chosen course, the small assertions of order they imposed on the chaos. They are out there now, not as conquerors of the sea, but as negotiators with it. The terms of the day's treaty are being written with every paddle stroke, every line cast into the silver depths. And on the shore, with the first true golden ray of sun finally breaking over the mountain ridge to paint the thatched roofs in brilliant, sudden gold, it is time for you to go. The sun does not so much rise as it pours, a flood of liquid gold over the mountain's shoulder. It ignites the world. The thatched roofs, damp with night mist, steam gently and glow like honeycomb. The dark wood of the houses warms to a rich, reddish brown. The strait transforms from silver to a dazzling, shimmering sheet of beaten copper, too bright to look at directly. The boats are now tiny, stark black punctuation marks on a blazing manuscript, each having reached its chosen station. The day's work, the central, defining act of this place, is fully underway, and your time as a ghost in its nighttime seems is over. You turn your back to the glorious, indifferent sea and begin to walk up the path, retracing your steps from what feels like a different epoch. The village is waking up around you, but it's a different village now. The night's mysteries have been burned away. The scuffed earth square by the well is busy. Women are drawing the day's first water, their conversations practical and loud about the laundry, the meals, the vegetables to be tended in the small plots behind the houses. Children, released from sleep, dart between legs, their voices sharp and cheerful in the clear air. The dog that ignored you last night is barking at a wandering chicken. The profound, sensory quiet has been replaced by the mundane music of diurnal life. You pass the fisherman's threshold. The door is wide open now, airing out the smell of the hearth. The old man's bucket is gone. The nets that needed mending are gone. The space feels empty, waiting. You pass the salt-curing yard. The old alchemist is already there, lifting the stones from her fermenting jars to check the progress in the daylight, her face a mask of critical appraisal. The sharp smells are stronger now, mingling with the wood smoke from a dozen morning fires. The village is not picturesque. It is vibrantly, unself-consciously functional. The night had hidden the frayed edges, the patches, the sheer used quality of everything. In the sun, you see the chips in the well's coping, the fraying edges of a thatch roof, the mud splashed up on the storehouse walls. It is beautiful not in its perfection, but in its utter lack of pretension. Every mark is a record of use, of weather, of life lived squarely in the jaws of necessity. You reach the top of the path, the rough stone step where you first entered. You pause and turn for a last look. The village sits in its narrow cradle, a neat cluster of organic shapes nestled between the solid green of the mountain and the brilliant, moving metal of the sea. The sounds of its morning life, the chatter, the clatter, the bark, are small and bright against the immense, humming silence of the natural world. The connection is so direct, so unmediated. The mountain gives wood and water. The sea gives food. The people give their labor. It is a closed circuit of reciprocal taking, a dance of survival that has ground this path smooth and shaped these lives for generations. You take a final breath, pulling in the loud morning air, wood smoke, salt, fermenting soy, damp earth. It is the taste of the place itself. Then you step up onto the stone, and then onto the coastal path that will lead you away. The village begins to recede, not just in distance, but in time. The modern world, with its abstract pressures and digital whispers, waits somewhere down that path, and you feel its pull like a reverse gravity. But the memory of the night walk, the soft lantern glow, the scraping mend, the silent vigil, the prayerful hook, the moonlit feast, the silent launch, is a settled weight in your mind, a vivid and complete world visited. And so we let the image soften now, like ink dissolving in clear water. Let the brilliant colors of the sunrise village gently blur and blend, the sharp sounds of the morning softening to a distant, harmonious murmur, no more distinct than the rustle of leaves in a far-off grove. The specific details, the pattern of the nets, the grain of the oar, the exact hue of the lantern light, they can begin to fade, leaving behind only the feeling they created, a feeling of deep, rhythmic quiet, of lives moving in patient cycles as dependable as the tide. The strait becomes a simple shimmer, the boat's mere suggestions of purpose on a vast, calm expanse. The mountain is no longer a detailed face of rock and pine, but a gentle, protective presence, a soft green shoulder against the sky. The village itself blurs into a warm, abstract smudge of earth tones nestled between these two great, quiet powers. There is no need to hold on to the facts and figures, the debates and details. Let them go. They have done their work. What remains is the essential calm, the slow, sure heartbeat of a world where the line between a person's life and the life of their place was seamlessly, beautifully woven. A world of silent understandings and tangible results, where the night was for mending and the dawn was for offering yourself to the wide, waiting water. Let that feeling be the gentle tide that carries you now, away from the specificity of that time and place, and back into the comfort of your own. The journey is complete. The quiet walk is over. The village is safe in its daily round, and you are safe in yours, connected across the centuries by nothing more, and nothing less, than the shared human rhythm of rest and endeavor, of quiet preparation and hopeful departure. Let the last of the images dissolve into a peaceful, dark water, carrying you softly into deeper rest.